Rett Larson, welcome to the Pacey Performance Podcast. Thank you for giving up some of your afternoon to have a little chat.
Hey, it's my pleasure. I'm giving up my afternoon, but you're giving up your middle of the night.
Well, someone did offer the opportunity to get on the podcast at 10 o'clock in the evening. It was taken, which is absolutely fine. Absolutely no problem at all. It's good to finally catch up. It's great to finally catch up.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to have you.
Oh, man. Long-time fan.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's an honour for you to say that. Anyone doesn't know who you are, Rhett? Would you mind just giving us a bit of an intro to yourself, what you're currently doing, and working back from there?
Sure. I'm currently the strength and conditioning coach for the German national women's volleyball team. And prior to that, I was with the Dutch women's volleyball team for 2 years. And then prior to that, I was with the Chinese women's volleyball team for 4 or 5 years, something around there. And that's the extent of my women's volleyball background. And before that, I actually was a journeyman like many of you out there that was working with all kinds of sports. I worked for EXOS Athlete Performance for 7 years almost, or about 5 years while I was in China. Before I started working with the Chinese team, I was with EXOS over in China, starting before the London Olympics in 2011, and then up through Rio in 2016, and then and before that, a bunch of time spent in Southern California working primarily with younger athletes. That's kind of where I cut my teeth as a strength coach. Was working for a company that specialized in that kind of 8 to 18 range. Which I recommend to a lot of coaches. I think it was really a nice way to come up. But for whatever reason, right now, I am a women's volleyball specialist. I don't know how it happened, but not mad at it. It's a fun sport. I mean, I have been with the Chinese national shooting team for months. That is a dull practice to have to sit through, Rob. You don't want to be at that practice every day. Women's volleyball, substantially more entertaining to have to while away the hours of practice.
I can imagine. So when you say you would recommend it, you recommend young coaches to go through a youth pathway before progressing to senior athletes?
Absolutely. I mean, and I used to think it was primarily because it helps you develop your coaching eye, right? You get to see bigger problems, more gross motor problems, and help you kind of quickly diagnose and fix the biggest one and then move on to the next. And it helps when you have not only younger athletes that are maybe making bigger mistakes and moving a little more slowly, but you also get a higher volume of athletes. I mean, that's usually in group youth training. But here's what I actually think might be the sneaky best reason to do it is that, especially with small group training of young athletes, it teaches you super valuable group control. And that is something that, as I have moved through the world of elite sport, I see more and more coaches that come over that are brilliant. But if you give them 7 athletes at a time, the session breaks down. And there's just, the flow is off. There's a lot of sitting around. And those coaches don't, sometimes suffer, I think. And I learned some really valuable lessons about how to keep groups of athletes, sweaty, but learning, entertained, while also, I feel like, of course, achieving all the performance goals that we wanted to. And getting that mix right, designing programs and being able to keep the motivation going on a group of young athletes, that is a special skill that, unfortunately, sometimes when you go to a performance facility, they'll stick their rookie coaches on the youngest groups of athletes, when in fact, that is the hardest group to be able to manage. And if you're good at it, that will serve you, that will pay dividends, even when you're working with the elite athletes.
That's like when you see that maybe the older age strength coach or older age coach, and you see them communicate, and then you actually realize that they came through a physical education background. They were potentially teachers, plenty who have been on the podcast, Kelvin Giles, Eddie Jones, England rugby head coach, all teachers. And then you go, that's why you sound like you do. That's why you communicate as effectively as you do.
That is spot on. Yep. 100%.
Yeah. I've told us many stories of when I used to take PE lessons at primary schools, and you've got 30 kids, They all want to be entertained. I know it's not high performance sport, but you've got to control them 30 kids. Keep the 10 that are desperate to be there, the 10 that cannot stand you or physical education lessons, and the 10 that probably aren't particularly bothered. So you've got these three groups. You've got to do your bit to keep them entertained and not allow them to climb on the roof or chuck your cones everywhere.
Yeah, and you're right, because the moment you're spending too much time with that third group, that group that doesn't want to be there, you're doing it, you're sacrificing the other group. And that group wants to see that you'll treat them in a certain way that shows that you really care about them, but that you're also not going to ignore the ones that are actually behaving. You don't want to always just give the squeaky wheel the grease. I think it was always this art of coaching that would hit with the coaches that were great at it were the ones where they'd have a group of 7 kids, but each one of those kids would come out having gotten individual feedback that would come out having, if a mom asked, what did you learn that day? They should absolutely be able to knock off things that they learned. They should be sweating their butts off. They should be smiling throughout the workout. And you at the end of the workout should be able to write in their chart, this is where he got better. And this is, the feedback I gave him. Like it is so much harder than a lot of coaches give it credit for. But once you have that skill, I still utilize those skills training the best of the best volleyball players every single session.
Yeah. So you're unaware of how you became the women's volleyball guy, but how did you become the warm-up guy?
These things happen kind of organically, and having to use systems, because like I said, I was with the EXOS system here in the United States for a long time, and that has a certain way that you're supposed to do warm-ups to prepare them for the whatever work is going to be done afterward. And it is so well thought out. It's so well done. But of course, there were parts of it that didn't fit my personality, or parts of it that I thought, okay, if I had my druthers, I would probably sacrifice a little bit of that to do a little bit of something that I think might be more in line with, the way I feel that athletes need to start preparing for their workouts. And I guess eventually it got to the point where I was doing things uniquely enough that people started taking notice. And, then you get somebody like David Joyce, who becomes a colleague of mine, who looks over and says, you don't do this like everybody else. And I would love for you to talk to people more about what your thought process is in designing a warm-up. And then that guy ends up writing a big book, and he asks you to do a chapter. And so that's how it happens. It's really just, the right place at the right time and doing things a little bit differently, I guess. Yeah. But, honestly, Rob, I put a ton of time into thinking about my warm-ups. And that's something that I've also come to realize that maybe I do differently than a lot of coaches, is that I spend an inordinate amount of time thinking about what the warm-ups are going to be for that week ahead. And even the day ahead, it's kind of a thing that can change pretty quickly, but yeah, that's probably it.
Which is interesting. If you're putting this time in and this effort in to design effective warm-ups, and you say that's different, or Joyce, you said that's potentially different to what other people are doing, and the execution might be different, but you'd hope that people are putting the time in to design these warm-ups, because more often than not, the strength coach, that's the bit that is theirs. That is the bit that, more often than not, the technical coach knows them for. The other one, like, how often is the S&C coach, performance coach, whatever you call them, being called the warm-up guy? You're the warm-up guy or the warm-up girl. So that's the bit that can be properly owned and developed and enhanced and thought about and properly designed. So, yeah, do you find that it is something that, despite that, what I've just said, it gets neglected?
Yeah, I think that it is an enormous missed opportunity by a lot of coaches, because you're right. It is a time when you are not only with your athletes, but you're kind of on stage in front of your coaches. Like, this is a moment that you get before every single technical training, that you can prove to your coaches how much you not only understand volleyball players, or you can understand exactly, even better, understand what they've been working on all week, and that all of a sudden you're incorporating the stuff that was driving the head coach crazy in practice yesterday. You've incorporated it into your warm-up the next day. Like, now we're just, if you're not thinking in that way, then you're missing an opportunity to, well, A, keep your job, like to cement yourself in a team that, if you are doing this well, if you have an adaptable warm-up that is at all times adjusting to meet the needs of your team at that time, then good luck to the dude trying to take your job next season. Because especially if he's doing the same skips and karaoke and walking knee hugs that everybody's been trotting out in the manuals for the last 20 years.
Yeah. Let's reverse this little bit of the conversation and go back to, do we actually need to warm up? Because how I remember warming up as a 16-year-old football player, and there'd be the same story everywhere, was a lap round the pitch, some static stretches, job done. Get the balls come out, and the footballs come out, and we crack on. It gets handed over to the technical coach. So with that in mind, there'll be still people out there that think that's sufficient. But all in all, why do you need to warm up? Why put the time in?
So, yeah, Rob, you don't need that warm up. I don't think.
Yeah.
I mean, the bars, you do need to get muscle tissue warm. I mean, that's all the research, when you look into it, like the only thing that we know is that if you want to prevent people from getting hurt, if you want to increase performance, like you really just need to, a warm tissue performs better and can go through a better range of motion, and it's just less likely to get hurt than a cold tissue. So you've got to get muscle temperature up. And in that respect, what you were doing, running around the pitch a couple times, tick the box. And that's great.
Yeah.
But as I said before, you are leaving so much on the table when you choose to spend your time doing that, because I don't think you need that. In fact, if that's what we're calling a warm-up, I don't think we need that. But at certain times in a season, my team needs speed. At certain times they need more shoulder stability. At certain times they need to not have their shoulders hurt so much. At certain times, and they do need more time to do each one of those things in a certain moment during my season. So whereas I don't need the traditional warm-up, I do always need more time to do something that's going to help the, whatever weakness that they have that is manifesting itself on the volleyball court at that time. So yeah, there's studies that show, you've got to warm up, but it is a tremendous waste of time to do it in a way that is not targeted towards your team's biggest weakness at that moment.
Excuse my language here, but I always remember a quote, and I sent it over to you on the email, was from Andrea Pirlo, I think he was Italian captain, soccer captain, and he described the warm-up as masturbation for conditioning coaches. Hated it. Absolutely hated it.
Hey, what, Rob? He's not I don't know that coaches get enough pleasure out of it to be called strictly masturbation, but I will say that some warm-ups seem to be designed to make the coach make the coach feel better than the athletes.
Yes.
That said, if you buy the editor's cut of the textbook, you'll see in figures 23 through 27, I talk all about coach autoeroticism. You're going to just enjoy that. So,
the editor's cut. I like it. Joyce did not send me that copy.
No, that's extra. Yeah, that's running triple digits on Amazon. You gotta. But I will tell you that that sometimes, especially when I see coaches out there that have their athletes looking like this little robot army of walking quad stretches and knee hugs, sometimes I think, you kind of just want everybody to think that you've trained your athletes really well and they're these little machines. As I talk about in the chapter, I'm more of a fan of a messier looking warm up.
Okay, that instantly, I know because I've been there, that instantly makes people nervous. Mess. Chaotic. I think I'm pretty reflective of a strength coach that likes things in a table, likes things in a line, likes to know what people are doing and be ordered. So when you say that, it probably makes people think, I'm not a fan of that, because again, going back to what you said at the start with the coach, if they look over, they think, what's going on over there? It's just mayhem over there. So how do you marry the chaotic nature of that, but also keeping it under control?
Yeah, and not just the coach, but sometimes even the athletes, especially older athletes, don't want to spend a ton of time feeling uncoordinated, feeling like, they're not the master of this movement. But I, as I write in the book, like I'm a big fan of using that time in the warm up to push athletes towards that messy outer edges of their athleticism. And, and that happens subtly, and it's for, maybe a smaller percentage of warm up. But let's say if we were to just break it down and I have a 5-minute kind of thermogenic section with my athletes, and let's be super simple. Let's say that it's just that we're just dealing with, I have a jump rope as a part of a super circuit. I would never want to just let the athletes continue to do the 2-legged jumps forward and backward or whatever it is. We're always going to be trying to learn new tricks. Like, I have to have them neurologically dialed in. I have to have them feeling comfortable failing psychologically. Like, I think it's just important that we get to a place, like, it's good for team bonding. It's also good. I mean, these athletes are used to, are incredible athletes, and they want to be achieving. And so, I like to be able to take, and this is maybe a bad example because we actually don't jump rope very often, but if we're going to jump rope, like, I would definitely endeavor by the end of the season to do it not often enough that it feels like jump rope class, but to do it a couple times a month and progressively get to a point where the girls can be doing running backward crosses and things like that. I need them to be kind of wiring different movements, wiring even things outside of volleyball, that I think that there's a lot of benefit from them having to kind of solve these movement puzzles with different implements, with different toys, things like that. And so as opposed to just constantly doing the same thing that you're good at, even if it's something as simple as skipping, like if you can skip laterally while doing something with your arms that's linear, or if you can skip linearly while doing, flossing, with your arms, like, that is going to be something that is going to get my athletes dialed in, but also smiling, also laughing with each other, also bonding. And that's going to be for the last 1 minute of a jump rope session where we're pushing, but it will be something. And if a coach is a little bit weird about it, don't worry. I'm going to take care of him in the last 5 minutes of warm up, where everything we do starts looking a lot like his volleyball practice from yesterday. And he gets right back on my team and starts to think about buying me a beer that night.
Especially in Germany when it's,
Yeah, he actually doesn't have to buy it. The Olympic Training Center has taps right outside. It's heaven.
It's what they're made of. Yes.
Yeah.
So when it comes to designing warm-up, let's take it back to the start. What is the structure? What is the thought process that you go through when you're designing a warm-up or series of warm-ups over a prolonged period of time?
Yeah. And as I kind of mentioned, I really go week to week, because I'm always kind of looking at what I did last week and seeing which parts need to be replicated the following week because I really want to build on them. But, I wouldn't maybe want to do jump rope 2 weeks in a row because I don't want them becoming jump ropers. I like them struggling with it. So, like, as I said, so let's just take a general week, which is, on Sunday, if I'm looking at what I'm going to do for the rest of the week. That would be, let's say we have 10 different warm-ups that I have to do before technical practice, because most days we're practicing twice a day. So that's 10 warm-ups that I'd have. Each warm-up that I get is 15 minutes, 15 to 20. Let's keep it 15 right now. The Germans give me 20. It's great. But 15 makes it easy. And I would probably break that 15 minutes up into 3 5-minute chunks, right? Kind of a thermogenic. First 5 minutes, I got to get their body warm. We've talked about that is the low bar that I have to cross or low bar that I got to get under in order to make sure that they're okay and safe to start. After that 5 minutes, I'm going to go into stretching. That's where I'm going to try to just do the minimal stretching that I need to get done. Tick that box. I don't stretch very long. I think that's a mistake a lot of coaches make, is just trying to throw a ton of stretches at athletes when they really don't need that much. And then the last 5 minutes is spent kind of neurally preparing them for practice. And so that's where things start looking more volleyball specific. That's where we're starting to fire at 100%. That's where I'm designing games, or, we'll talk about constraints that will have them moving closer and closer to game speed, doing some volleyball movements. But yeah, if you look at that, let's just take out the 5-minute section that's stretching. But that still leaves me with 20 different open 5-minute slots in which I can start making my athletes better, if that makes sense, right? And so then I start looking at, there's some things that are kind of non-negotiable in my week. I'm always going to sprint my athletes. And I need them kind of, as much as I love variety, I need them to know when sprint day is coming up. And so let's say every single Wednesday morning, we're going to sprint. I'm going to do a warm-up that is, at the end of that warm-up, going to end up with all of my athletes doing at least 3 runs at 100% with timing gates up at 10 meters, then up to 15, like progressively longer as the season goes on. And I'll constrain them at first so nobody runs fast enough to get hurt. Like I'll have them holding medicine balls, things like that slow them down. But by the end, the medicine balls are off and I'm just racing my team. And my team is all trying to see if they can be the fastest girl at their position. And because they know the results get published to all the coaches and it's a big deal. So that day goes in first. And that's actually a kind of a boring warm-up because that's like a sprinter warm-up. Like I'm doing a ton of hamstring stuff, of course. I cannot have an athlete get hurt doing this. After that, there's days, like barefoot days. So there's going to be days in my week and warm-up sessions that are going to be no shoes because I got to get their ankles stronger. I got to take their shoes off and do some out of alignment kind of stuff too. I need to make sure their ankles are strong when they're everted. And so I put probably that stuff in first because the girls have to kind of know which days to not come in with shoes on and know what days it's going to be sprinting. Like I need that consistency. But after that, I'm left with a dozen or so boxes where now I'm thinking, okay, first of all, in the weight room, I don't have enough time to do all the shoulder work that needs to be done to keep volleyball players safe. So in that first thermogenic group throughout the week, I'm going to be like, all right, let's do handstands against the wall there. Let's do functional range conditioning, like infinity hovers here. Let's do banded work here. Let's do this here. And I will pepper in shoulder work in the thermogenic section. Then, of course, I'll look at what toys I have available. And I'll say, okay, well, here in this particular gym, we have dowel rods. So I'll do kind of a dowel rod based thing in that thermogenic. Maybe I have girls holding the dowels against the wall doing overhead squats. Maybe it's a movement screen for me that day. Maybe they're doing some skips with the stick over their head and a Franz Bosch like co-contraction kind of stuff. But low level, low intensity, thermogenic stuff. If I have 2x4s, if I have my medicine balls, if I have bands, if I have whatever it is, I'm going to just say this will be my band day, and I'll go to my Excel spreadsheet and pick from my long list of thermogenic exercises that I can do with this piece of equipment, and I start filling in those thermogenic sections throughout the week. Then I'm going to maybe check with my physical therapist to say, hey, are you seeing big problems? Like, do you need to be teaching me 3 thoracic spine mobility exercises so that we can pepper those into warm up, into the thermogenic section? We'll make a little circuit that involves one of those every day so that we maybe get out of some shoulder pain problem that you see. Maybe my physical therapist is like, Rett, we're getting some knee issues. I would love to recheck their ankle mobility. Well, great. Let's put a movement screen into one of the thermogenic circuits. We'll have them, jump roping here, and then they immediately walk over to the wall and see how far back they can keep their heel on the ground while they touch their knee to the wall. And we look for the big elephants in the room that might be big problems. And so after I've done that, and then I'm thinking, okay, what has the head coach been talking about all week? All right. So he was complaining 2 days ago that the girls aren't low enough on defense. Well, let me put in some stuff where the girls have to keep, the net. They have to be under the net and not letting their head touch the net while I throw medicine balls at them or they throw medicine balls to each other. Let me do some, if they're not crossing over well on blocks, let me throw some bungee cords on them for the neurological section of my workouts and put in some of that. And it just goes on and on. If we're not swinging hard at the ball, then maybe and you have to know where to put it. If it's something I can handle with a low intensity exercise, then it goes in the thermogenic section. If it's something that needs to be done at 100%, that's very volleyball-like, like crossing over mechanics with resistance or assistance, then it goes into that last section. But if it's out of alignment strength, all that stuff goes into kind of the thermogenic sections. And so I just slowly build it out using the toys that I have available, ticking the box of stuff that I need to get it done. Out of alignment strength, making sure they're strong with rounded backs, valgus knees, inverted ankles. That's stuff that I don't have time to do in my weight room. And so I love to be able to get that strength training done in warm-up. Same thing with just other biomotor abilities. I don't do a lot of balance stuff in the weight room. So anything that I'm going to do on a single leg, no, not anything, but if I'm doing things that are just purely for balance, I shove that into warm-up. If I see something crazy on YouTube and I'm like, oh my God, I wonder if my girls could do that, I'll throw it right in. Who cares? It's one circuit, 5 minutes. They'll do one circuit of it for 5 minutes on Wednesday morning. Great. Let's see how that looks. And so there's freedom there. And it's not mindless. I mean, a circuit has to make sense. You have to make sure that in a thermogenic circuit, there's something that's thermogenic, and it's not all three things are picking on their legs, that they go from upper body to lower body to a movement screen or something like that. And then you just make sure it has flow. I mean, do we have days when the girls are working together in 2s and 3s? Because that's also a fun part of gamifying the system, making them all kind of team up and have to do things that involve some cooperation and fun. Is it fun? Like, have I put in enough? Have I stolen stuff from Kevin Giles' PE stuff? Like, have I gone in and made sure that we can I take out that plyometric session? This is our 20th plyometric session of the week, and instead put in a PE game that involves similar biomechanical abilities or whatever. And so I'll make sure that there's also a component that's actually freaking fun. That's where the silly dancing and stuff can come in. That I
wasn't going to mention that.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I feel like that's the no. That's fine. I just didn't want to bring it up because I thought you might get bored of it. I've been asked about it all the time. Is that right or not?
No, it's fun. And it's something that I think I was embarrassed about initially, but now I kind of own it. Because in truth, like, the dancing stuff that got to be such a big deal online is the stuff we do before competition. And I have not been talking about a competition warm-up so far. Like, a competition warm-up is kind of a separate animal, like where there's a certain amount of like swagger and fun. And we do that for a whole different set of reasons. But as far as dancing during pre-training warm-ups, the German team did that once last season. I mean, they would love to do it more, but yeah, they, it's not a huge part of what we do, but it does make sense within the kind of the fun realm. I mean, I'm not ever opposed to doing it. There are times when the thing my athletes need the most is to just relax a little bit. And in that time, that's the perfect time where I'll fake them out. I'll set up like kettlebells and stuff and medicine balls all over the floor. And then I'll have us just dance in a whole different section of the floor. It's always that little zig and zag. I get the big scream and cheer, and the girls go crazy about it. But yeah, there's no reason you can't. I mean, the girls are sweaty and exhausted and dialed in, and it ticks all my boxes. And then I just make them go from a dance to a handstand against the wall to single leg squats with their partner to some other shoulder screen, and then we do another dance. And for that day, that might be the best thing that I could be doing for them thermogenically and for their mental state. Man, Rob, I just didn't realize I've just been talking like a ton. Like, I'm not sure.
No, it's great. It did. If I wouldn't have enjoyed it, I would have interrupted. So it's absolutely great. Let's have a little chat about that middle 5 minutes, the stretching.
Yeah.
So there's constant debate, and there will be constant debate forever and a day about stretching. Let's get your thoughts. That 5 minutes, what does it include? What do you mean by stretching?
Okay, so for me, this is kind of the least effective dose is what I'm going to look for. And as much as I pride myself in all of the variety that goes into the other parts of that warm-up, I am really consistent in the stuff that I like to do to make sure my athletes, mobility-wise, are ready to go to war. I don't spend a lot of time on it, but I really love a couple of big bang-for-the-buck multi-joint stretches. EXOS used to have this thing, the world's greatest stretch, would be a good example of it. Kelly Starrett has a hip opener series that he does. That's actually what I do almost more often. That for me, like I'd be nervous if the girls didn't do it before. And you can YouTube it, Kelly Starrett's hip opener series. I think it's one of his most popular workouts, but it's one of my favorites. But similarly, there are Bretzel variations that I do for thoracic spine and hip mobility that we'll hit on. I'm a huge fan of I think I mentioned it before, the FRC group, the functional range conditioning, where I can, adding mobility or adding strength and range of motion strength to unlock more flexibility out of a joint. I'm really going after that. For volleyball players, it's ankle, it's hip, it's thoracic spine, and it's shoulder. And if I get those 4 things done, I'm kind of out of there. Like, that's it. And in order to that, it's not just I'll usually pepper in some different kind of strength stuff in there as well. Like, that might be a place where we do some isometric holds that my physical therapist like and that I think are too boring to put into my weight room. And so, I'm always going to add a little bit of variety, but the girls are going to see some repetition there. Now, Rob, let me tell you this. I don't know that I am moving the needle at all when it comes to these athletes' flexibility. Like, I don't know. I don't think that I've actually, this is going to really shoot me in the foot. Nobody's going to read my chapter now. I really don't. But not that it's my goal. Like, I'm really not trying to generally make athletes more flexible unless they have a big problem that my therapist and I have seen through movement screens. But otherwise, I just need them to own whatever range of motion they naturally have. Like, that's what I'm looking for. I honestly, and this is a hot take that I think I stole from Ido Portal, if you know that guy, is that I'm not sure athletes are able to make really big changes in mobility during the season when they're asking their muscles to be constantly CNS, like asking their CNS to be constantly activated and firing. And that probably if you really want to make a big change, you've got to just lay off the weights, lay off the jumping, lay off the power stuff, and spend dedicated time, 3 months, 6 months, doing straight up yoga / stretching / long hold stretches. Like, I think that's probably the way to do it. You've got to just not confuse your nervous system and just let everything have time to calm down. And then maybe you can get that mobility and own it, hopefully for long term. But I don't know.
Can I play devil's advocate now, Rhett?
Please.
So a third of that time, so your 5 minutes, your middle 5 minutes, you're performing exercises, and you just said from exercises that they cannot improve on in season, and you don't know whether you're moving the needle or not.
Right. But critically, I don't think it matters too much. I don't think these girls are already playing at this level, with the mobility that they have now. And so, especially when I get them, which is 2-3 weeks before before their first competition, it's not realistic for me to think that I'm probably going to have that much effect on mobility. All this for across the board, generally speaking, with my team in general. Now, if we have an athlete who has just horrible range of motion in the ankle, and we've got to do something about it, especially if it's an asymmetry, then we attack it. And I think the best time to attack it is not that freaking 5 minutes before warm up. Right there, we're just trying to get you into the range of motion you normally have and whatever. I think you got to attack that at night. And there's 1,000 different ways that you might do it. But during the season, that is, me prescribing, I've done this before, prescribe to the athletes to say, hey, listen, your hips are worrying me. I need you, when you're watching Netflix, to be doing that couch stretch hip opener. And I need you to be holding it for, let's start with 5 minutes aside this week, 6 minutes aside next week. And I just don't think that me doing a 7 minute, I just don't think there's time in the warm up to do something that's appreciatively going to help.
Okay, let's dive into that last little bit around what you do on a night. So even if the girls aren't bringing showing any issues, hips, for example, would you still prescribe things for them to do on night, long duration stretches, or that's just for those that present with issues?
To be honest, I've used it only with the ones that present with issues. But that said, I think almost anyone can benefit. It feels freaking great. I think you sleep better after you do things like that. And I think, why not? It's kind of wasted time anyway. So, setting into a couch stretch or a butterfly stretch or holding a squat, all of it, I think, is really beneficial to do at night. I think you could actually, you start getting a little bit more of, I think you could probably achieve some more mobility.
If you watch any Premier League football, maybe not this season, I don't think I've seen it as much this season, but certainly last season or the season before, if you watch Sky Sports, which you may do when you're in Germany and watch the Premier League, you will see during the warm-up the activation bands, the glute bands come out. Let's have a little talk about that. I don't know if it seems to have faded out or I'm just not seeing it, but there was a time where the bands were always out. You saw glum-looking Premier League stars with bands around their ankles and bands around their knees doing these activation exercises during warm-ups. Firstly, what's your take on that? What is the aim of that small section of the warm-up? And is it me, or do you think that fad has just eased itself away, or is it still there?
It's certainly eased itself away, and it is a staple of the EXOS program. So, and the end of the chapter for the first edition of this book that I wrote, because I was still with EXOS when I wrote it. But it is a very small part of my program now. I think that there's a place for it. It certainly can do the job activating some muscles that are often asleep, especially on sedentary people that those need to wake up. With my athletes, I'm much more apt to want to use them, not maybe in the traditional way, but like I have mini band thermogenic routines that we'll do where we are moving them all around, but I'm into moving fast with them. Like, I'm not into just doing the same marches every time. I'm into kind of challenge them neurologically with a little bit more balanced stuff. Like, I'm kind of against it being super dull. And that's why I get away. There's other ways that we can wake up those muscles, I think, that don't involve having to strap on the mini bands, which can sometimes just logistically be no fun. But that's it. I still have it as a part of my program, but it is not an everyday staple. It's probably like a twice a week staple. But that's when I'm looking at my big screen, my big Excel spreadsheet that's empty for that week. I am thinking, okay, I still have the bag of them, and I'll say, hey, let's do it 3 of the 20 warm-ups. I'll throw that into thermogenics. Some days we're moving fast. Some days we might do more traditional monster walks and things like that. But no, I think they are losing a little bit of their popularity. I mean, it used to be that every athlete had their own set of them, and now you can get the nice big, like, thick ones, and so we still see those, but not using them as often.
Would they be used more in if you were working with certain populations, certain other populations?
Yeah, it could be. I do think there's a place for them. I mean, I think I've almost used them more in the weight room. Like, I like the idea of activating, and we'll throw on big bands when we're doing some of our squats and things like that to make sure that we're in alignment, or just that we're turning on some muscles that I want to make sure are awake. But yeah, I think maybe if I had a more sedentary population, maybe I would use them more often. But I still wouldn't use them as often enough that it would get to be a routine. I'm pretty anti-routine.
Okay. Can we spend the last 10 or 15 minutes talking about cool down? That'd be
oh yeah.
I think that'd be a good place to round us off.
Yeah.
And the list that I sent you over, I had a little giggle to myself because when I started playing in 2003-04, I think I was right at the back, especially in football here in the UK. I was right at the back end of the kind of a pint after a game with players.
Yeah.
And the front end of, rather than a pint, you'd have a protein shake. So that was kind of the cusp, especially at the level that I was playing at. So the point that I sent you over was cool down more than just a beer and a pie, which is what it was not too long before I finished playing, started playing. Sorry. So I'd love to get your take on cool downs.
I moved to the German national team expressly because I was hoping it would be back to beer and a pie. Like, I thought that's what I was going to get. Like, I thought maybe I can go back to keeping this simple. Cool down is, I thought I had cool down figured out when I was with the Chinese team. We did something I thought was really good there. And we would treat it much like because what sucks about cool down is that the athletes are mentally checked out. Like, it's the last thing they want to do. I've never, as engaging and fun as I think I am not at all the person they want to be hanging out with when practice is over. It's like flossing. They know they need to do a cool down. Some of them know they need to do a cool down. They know they're going to be made to do a cool down, I guess. And I tried to find ways that would make it as effective, but as, like, I don't know, as painless as possible. Like, I used to put everybody in a circle, and some days we'd be doing kind of my bastardized version of yoga. Some days we'd be doing 5 minutes of like sitting postures that I stole from someone. Some days we would be doing kind of the stretch to win protocol that I used to have that I developed after I read that book. I kind of like 5 different. I had a whole foam rolling circuit that I would do some days, and I would just kind of go between my foam rolling day, my band stretching day, my stretch to win day, my yoga day, my blah blah blah, and I would just kind of cycle between those. But I started getting super annoyed that the girls were always so chatty, and I was just pushing rock uphill. I mean, that's all personal. Like, it's just my ego got bruised. That of course they want to talk about the game they just finished playing and all the stuff that happened. Like, why was my ego insisting that they should be riveted to the 17 stretches I'm about to put them through that I think are just so badass? So what we did in China is that we'd set up small circuits. Like when they came off the floor, I had little stations set up. Like, I had a bunch of Theraguns or Hyperices set up in one section. I had some barbells set up for weighted stretches. Like, we would do like weighted kind of Jefferson curl, long hold, standing off of a box, like just hamstring holds. Maybe there's a section that has a lacrosse ball and they're getting into their shoulders. That was kind of a shoulder area. Or maybe that was an area where I let them do whatever they wanted. There'd be a section where I had bands, and I was going to tell them, hey, I need everybody doing their hamstring stretch in this section. And I just put a little timer in. You can chat with whoever you want, but when the timer goes off, that's been a minute. You need to move on to the next section. And after 5 minutes, you've been through it all. I feel good. We've ticked the box. And every day it's also a little bit different. I can give them more autonomy when I want them to be able to choose. And some days I'm like, hey, I know you guys hate rolling out your lats, but unfortunately it's super freaking important for your hitting shoulder. So at this foam rolling station, you got to roll out your lats if you're a hitter. And so I kind of dip in and out of how much of a tyrant I was going to be. And that worked great. The athletes liked that they could see the end in sight, that it was, if they just motored through it. I liked that that I felt like it was ticking the boxes, that like I could do some out of alignment stretching kind of things if I wanted to. It's just another place that I could assert my will over them. Now, I tried that, that involves some equipment. So when we go on the road, I stopped being able to do it as often. And with the German team, we changed locations. We have so many different training camps that it was almost impossible. And the girls, I ended up developing a system where instead we all start with our legs up on the wall and I have this whole circuit that we do with they're on the ground, but feet are up on the wall. And we sit there for a while they all chat. And then all of them have big bands, and we start doing some ankle mobility stuff that goes into some butterfly stretches that goes into crossing a foot over a knee and getting into like a figure 4 kind of glute stretch. All of this kind of long hold, like 30 seconds to a minute on each side, just calming the CNS down. And I've evolved that over time. It can kind of change. And, I just keep trying to be as creative as I can so that so that we tick that box, and you know, at the end of that, we can also work in some meditation, visualization stuff that I like to do with them. And so it has enough, you know, it's all kind of in one place, and I can do it anywhere, and it kind of has enough wiggle room where I can have a lot of variety. But I've gone away from the circuit. Now we got this wall thing that the German athletes really like. Oh, I should think about that. It's like the Berlin Wall. Oh, I got to think of a good name for that.
Oh, jeez. Would that go down well or not?
No, maybe. I don't know.
No.
I don't know. That's a great. No, probably not. All right. Yeah. All right.
Two things. Two slightly controversial. Not controversial, but stuff that always causes a conversation. Foam rolling.
Yep.
1. 2.
Yep.
The Theragun's Hyper Ice massage gun. First, let's tick off the foam roller first. Again, hot topic. Everyone was doing it. Now it's like, wasting my time. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, if gun to my head, how much does it really effectively help? Not too much. But for so many athletes, it is so maybe analgesic, and it just helps them, it feels so good afterward for them, and they've done it for so long, they have to do it. For me, if it's in cool down, that is a low pressure mode for me. That is when I am happy to do stuff that I don't even truly like. I don't believe is as effective as me using time for something else. So when they're on that wall, oftentimes I'm setting up foam rollers behind their head, and they're like, oh, okay. Well, then I'll say, okay, everybody grab your foam roller and put it in your T-spine, and let's do our T-spine rolling. Let's tick that box for those of you that love it. You'll notice I don't do any soft tissue in my warm-ups before practice. The girls that are addicted to soft tissue stuff, that are addicted to that stuff, they got to do it before my warm-up starts. I don't take time to do. I think that for those athletes that really need to do it, it takes up so much time to just kind of get the whole body done a little bit. Like if the girls that want to foam roll, that need to foam roll, really just need to do it in the two spots that they know help them feel good. And so I think it's so individual that it's not worth doing in a group setting, because it just takes time away from a warm-up component that I think is probably way more valuable. Now, in cool down, I don't mind having the whole group do some stuff, and maybe you know, and what I'll say afterward is, hey, if I just made you do something that you never do and it felt great, you might want to add it to your pre-warm-up routine or stuff that you do all the time, but not on my clock, not on my watch. Generally not on my watch. And with the guns, okay, I think they're awesome. I really think they're great.
Okay.
Again, I also don't know if they're just like $100 placebo-inducing like trickery. If it came out that that's the case, I wouldn't be completely shocked. But
no.
There's enough people that love the way they feel afterward, that at least in the short term, it helps them enough that I'm happy to lay them out. I mean, I own 2, and I'm sitting here telling you, who knows if it works, but the girls that have them certainly love them.
Hyper Ice or Theragun, or another alternative brand that you own? What have you gone for?
No, I own one of each.
Ooh.
Yeah. Oh well, I got like
both exactly the same.
I got the first generation Theragun. When you turn it on, it sounds like an airplane is taking off.
Yes.
It is like no one uses it. You can't use it. You have to have like 2 sets of noise canceling headphones to be able to tolerate it.
Yeah. Yeah. I was at a trade show in probably 2018, and there was a big Theragun place where they all were, and there was multiple ones going off at the same time, and it was hell walking past there. just hammer drills, just multiple hammer drills. It was absolutely bizarre.
I have looked into trading it in, if they'll take it as a trade-in and give me a discount on one of their more now silent ones, and the trade-in is they'll give you like $25 for it. So I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but at some point I got to unload this thing. I think it cost me $500 back in the day, and it is unusable.
Yeah. Well, I think you've mentioned it enough. Only a couple of times, so that's all good. But Joyce, you'll be happy with the book has been plugged. So, high performance training for sports. All this information and more is in chapter
23.
23. Okay.
Yeah.
On cooldown. Did you do the first edition?
Yeah.
Did you? Okay.
That's and as I kind of mentioned, the first edition was when I was working for EXOS, and the first edition, holy smokes, that took a year off my life. I feel like that was so hard to write, and it was just, I don't know. I felt so I felt like I really had to do right by the EXOS methodology, but still part of me in there too. This second edition, I probably changed 85% of it, so it's all new this time. A lot less citations and a lot more plain spoken read opinions, for better or for worse. I don't know.
Love it. Well, people can get that everywhere now, can't they? That's available on
Yeah.
Amazon globally, I think. Cool. Well, Rett, thank you very much for coming on. I really appreciate you giving up some of your afternoon. But where can people keep up to date with you? We've mentioned the book. What about you?
Yeah, I'm not somebody that people need to probably keep up to date with. I need to be better about it, but I'm on. I post. I need to do better about posting to Instagram because I know that my athletes on the German team would probably really like it. But my handle on Instagram is Rettasaurus. Don't ask. I had like a nephew named me Rettasaurus a long time ago, but RETTAUSARUS.
Whoa, slow down. Go on, do it again.
RETTASAURUS.
Love it.
And then on Twitter, I'm just Rett Larson, just my first and last names squeezed together. And that's it.
Okay, it's only one S, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. Well, thank you very much. People can jump over to the Instagram and Twitter and give you a follow. But I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much for giving me the afternoon and for a great chapter as well.
Hey, thank you. I'm happy that a lot of people seem to be enjoying the book. I'm super proud of the chapter, so I am, as always, super flattered to be involved in this book. It just occurred to me, maybe it's because Halloween is coming up. Sitting in your chair, you look kind of like a vampire. The back of your chair kind of looks like the collar. It does.
Does it? Because I've got a black t-shirt on.
Yeah, you got the black t-shirt on with the collar.
People listening who aren't watching on the video won't know what we're talking about. But I've got a black t-shirt on. I've got I've got a black t-shirt on. I've got a black headrest, and they seem to have merged in the video.
It's spooky. It's giving you an edge. I'm intimidated.
We'll round it up there.
Yeah.
With that, but no, Rett, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure. And we'll keep in touch and speak soon.
Yeah, that sounds great, Rob. This was great. Appreciate it.
Thanks, mate.